The day I heard the words, stage 3, I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I didn't even cry at first. I just nodded like I was taking notes in class, while my whole life cracked open inside my chest. Then I walked outside the hospital, sat in my car, and called the two people who were supposed to love me no matter what. My parents. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. And my father's first words were not, "Are you okay?" They were not, "I'm coming." He said, "We can't deal with this right now. Your brother is planning his wedding." Before I tell you how that one sentence turned into the 4 words I said to him 2 years later, comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. And type the keyword, strength, if you've ever had to be strong when nobody showed up for you. Subscribe too, because this story has a twist near the end that still makes my hands go cold when I think about it. My name is Camille. I was 28 when I got diagnosed. I lived alone in a small apartment. I worked hard. I paid my own bills. I wasn't a problem child. I wasn't wild. I wasn't reckless. I was the kind of daughter parents should feel proud of. But in my family, pride only went one direction. Toward my brother Logan. Logan was the son in our house. The golden boy. The one who could do no wrong. Private school. New car at 18, big gifts. Big applause. And me. I was the background. The one who was fine. The one who didn't need much. When I was little, my mom used to say, "Camille is independent." It sounded like a compliment. But what it really meant was, Camille can be ignored. And my dad loved big moments. Big photos. Big speeches. Big attention. He loved looking like a perfect father. But when real life showed up, the messy kind, he didn't want it near him. So when my doctor said stage 3, I called home, because I still had that hope inside me. That childish hope. The hope that fear would wake them up. The hope that cancer would make my family finally act like a family. I called my mom first. She answered, breathy, like she was in the middle of something fancy. I could hear voices behind her. Laughter. Music. "Hi, honey," she said. I swallowed hard. "Mom, I have cancer." Silence. Not the soft kind. The scary kind. Then she whispered, "Camille, what?" And in the background, I heard my dad's voice, sharp and impatient. "Who is it?" My mom didn't even step away. She just said, "It's Camille." Then my dad's voice came close to the phone, like he leaned in. "Camille, we can't deal with this right now. Your brother is planning his wedding." I blinked like my brain couldn't translate it. "Dad, I'm scared," the doctor said. He cut me off. "Stop, you're always dramatic. Call someone else, we're busy." Then he hung up. I remember staring at my phone like it was broken. Like the call must have dropped. Like no father could say that and mean it. But he meant it. And I didn't know it yet, but that phone call was only the beginning. Because once you see who people are in your worst moment, you can't unsee it. And I didn't know they were about to prove it again. My first chemo session was on a Monday. The sky was gray and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I wore a hoodie and leggings. I brought a tote bag with crackers, a water bottle, and a book I wouldn't be able to focus on. I walked into the chemo center, and the smell hit me first. Clean. Sharp. Like alcohol wipes and fear. The nurse smiled and asked, "Who's with you today?" I tried to smile back. "Just me." She paused just a second. Like she wanted to say something kind, but didn't want to offend me. Then she said, "Okay, I'll take good care of you." I sat in the chair. The chair was soft but not comforting. More like a dentist chair. Like it expected pain. Around me were other patients. A woman with a scarf on her head. A man holding a plastic bucket. A teenage boy with his mom rubbing his shoulder. I kept looking at the empty chair beside me. Empty. My phone buzzed once. Not my parents'. It was a group text from my mom. A wedding planning update. A photo of table decorations. A smiling emoji. I stared at it like I was seeing another language. Then the chemo drip started, and a cold feeling moved up my arm. And I thought, okay, so this is what I am to them. A background character. Even now. I didn't cry in that room. I waited until I got home. Until the door closed. Until I couldn't pretend anymore. Then I slid down the wall in my hallway, and I cried so hard my ribs hurt. And in the middle of that crying, I made a quiet promise to myself. I said it out loud into my empty apartment. I will not beg for love. But I didn't know love was going to show up from somewhere I didn't expect. After my second chemo, the side effects hit me like a truck. My mouth tasted like metal. My stomach rolled. My bones ached. I tried to stand up and the room tilted. I ended up on my bathroom floor, cheek pressed to cold tile, trying to breathe through nausea like it was labor. I called my mom again. Not to complain. Not to guilt them. Just to hear a voice. To hear someone say, "I'm here." She answered on the third ring. "Camille, is everything okay?" I could tell she was annoyed already. Like I was interrupting a show. "My chemo, I'm not doing good. I think I need help tonight." She sighed, long and heavy. "Honey, I can't, your father's stressed. Logan's meeting with the venue. It's all happening so fast." I swallowed. "Mom, can you just talk to me, just 5 minutes?" She lowered her voice. "Camille, please don't do this right now. If your father hears you crying, he's going to get upset." I froze. "He's going to get upset at me?" "Camille," she said like I was a child. "You know how he is." And then she said the sentence that made something in me go cold. "Maybe call a friend. Your brother needs us right now." I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just whispered, "Okay." Then I hung up. And I lay on the bathroom floor again, staring at the ceiling, thinking, so this is it. This is what family means in my house. It means you matter only if you make them look good. But I didn't know the next day was going to introduce me to the kind of kindness that saved my life. My neighbor, Jade, noticed my mail piling up. We weren't friends. We were hay in the hallway friends. She knocked on my door with my letters in her hand. When I opened the door, I must have looked terrifying. Pale. Sweaty. My hair already thinning. My eyes swollen like I hadn't slept in a week. Jade's face changed instantly. "Camille, are you okay?" And for some reason, that simple question broke me. Because nobody in my family asked it. Not once. I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. Tears came fast, hot, and embarrassing. Jade stepped forward. Hey, it's okay." I shook my head. "It's not, I have cancer." She blinked, then she put the mail down and said, "Okay, what do you need?" I didn't even know what to say. Nobody had asked me that so directly. I whispered, I don't have anyone." Jade's eyes got shiny. "You do now." That night she brought soup. She didn't make it dramatic. She didn't pity me. She just walked in like it was normal to help a sick neighbor. She sat on my couch and turned on a dumb reality show so I wouldn't sit in silence. And while the TV played, Jade said something I'll never forget. "You keep calling people who keep dropping you," she said softly. "Stop bleeding where no one will bandage you." I stared at her. Because it was the truth. And it hurt. And it also felt like permission. But I didn't know my family was about to make their choice even louder. The wedding was 3 months into my chemo. I knew because my mom posted photos like it was a movie premiere. Hair done. Makeup perfect. Big smile. My dad in a suit, hand on Logan's shoulder like he was passing down a crown. I was in bed that day, wearing an old t-shirt, shivering under a blanket even though it was warm outside. My skin felt too tight. My body felt like it was fighting a war. Jade sat beside me and scrolled quietly on her phone. Then she looked up and said, "Careful, do you want to see what your mom posted?" I said no. But my voice shook. Jade hesitated. "Okay." Then my own phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "Big day, wish you were here, love you." I stared at that sentence like it was a joke. Wish you were here. Love you. My hands started to tremble. I typed back, "Mom, I'm in chemo, I needed you." I watched the message deliver. Then nothing. No reply. Hours passed. No reply. The next day she posted again. A photo of Logan and his wife leaving in a luxury car. My dad smiling wide like he won an award. And I realized something. They weren't busy. They were choosing. Every day. They were choosing Logan over me. Over and over like it was easy. Like it cost them nothing. That's when I stopped calling. Not as a punishment. Not to be petty. To survive. Because I couldn't heal while begging people to care. And I didn't know cutting them off was going to make me stronger than I ever imagined. Chemo turned me into someone new. It stripped me down. It made me honest. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't smile through pain for the comfort of others. I started therapy. I joined a support group. I met women who had been through hell and still laughed. Women with scars and humor and fire in their eyes. One woman, Ruth, was in her 60s. She wore bright lipstick every session like a protest. She listened to my story and said, "Sweetheart, you are not abandoned because you're unlovable. You were abandoned because they are weak." I swallowed hard. "But they are my parents." Ruth nodded. "And they failed you." It hurt to hear. But it also freed me. Because once you admit the truth, you stop trying to fix a lie. 6 months after my first chemo, my doctor said the words I thought I'd never hear. "It's working." I didn't jump up. I didn't celebrate like a movie scene. I just started crying quietly right there in the exam room, covering my mouth, trying not to shake. The nurse handed me tissues and said, "You did this." I whispered, "No, I survived it." And as I walked out of the hospital that day, I looked at my phone and realized my parents had not called once. Not one visit. Not one "How was chemo?" Not one "Do you need groceries?" Nothing. So I made a decision. If I could survive cancer alone, I could survive life without them too. But I didn't know 2 years later, life would come back around like a closed fist. 2 years later, I was cancer-free. My hair grew back. Not the same as before. Softer. Curly in places it never curled. Like my body decided to come back different on purpose. I got stronger. I changed jobs. I started running again. I traveled. I laughed without forcing it. I built a life that didn't revolve around approval. I even started sharing parts of my story online. Not for pity. For power. Because women messaged me saying, I thought I was the only one. And for the first time, I felt like my pain meant something. Like it could help someone else stand up. Then one random Tuesday, my phone rang. Dad's name. I stared at it. My thumb hovered. My heart did that stupid thing it always did around family. That hopeful little flutter. I answered. Hello. And I heard crying. Real crying. My father's voice sounded thin. Old. Camille, he said. I didn't speak. He sniffed hard. I have Parkinson's. I stayed quiet. He rushed on, like he was afraid I'd hang up. It's getting worse. I can't do things like before. Your mother can't handle it. Logan is busy, he has work, he has the baby, Then he said it. The sentence that made my stomach drop. I need you to come home, be my caregiver. The audacity of it. The way he said it like it was natural. Like I owed him my body, my time, my life. Like he didn't leave me to fight for my life alone. My hands started to shake again, the same way they shook outside the hospital years ago. And I felt two versions of myself inside my chest. The old Camille. The girl who wanted her dad to finally need her. Finally choose her. And the new Camille. The woman who survived without him. The woman who learned what love is supposed to look like. My father was still crying. Please, he said. Camille, I'm your father. And that's when I gave him my 4 words. I said, calm and clear, call your son, Dad. Silence. Like the air got sucked out. Then he whispered, what did you say? I repeated it slower. Call your son, Dad. He went stiff. I could hear it in his breath. Like he sat up straight, shocked someone talked back to him. Camille, he snapped, the tears drying instantly. Don't you dare. I cut him off. Don't I dare what? Do what you did to me. He said, angry now, this is different. I laughed once, bitter. No, it's the same. You needed me to be quiet, and I was. Now you need me to save you, and I won't. His voice rose. After everything I've done for you. I said, you didn't do anything for me. You did things for Logan. He started to breathe hard. Like he was trying to find words that would control me again. Then he tried guilt like always. I'm sick, I'm scared. I said, so was I. Silence again. Then my father said something that made my skin go cold. He said, you're not a good daughter. And in that moment, I realized he still didn't see me. He still didn't feel sorry. He only felt desperate. So I said, I'm hanging up now. And I did. But I didn't know that call wasn't really about Parkinson's. Not completely. And I didn't know the real reason he wanted me home was about to come out. The next day, I got a message from my cousin, Elena. We were never close, but she was the kind of person who knew the family gossip before it became public. She wrote, "Camille, are you okay? Dad told people you're refusing to help Grandpa Richard. He's saying you're heartless." I stared at my screen. Of course. The story was already being written. So I called her. Elena answered fast. "Camille, what's going on?" I said, "Tell me the truth. Why is he really calling?" She hesitated. Then she whispered, "You don't know." My chest tightened. "Know what?" She lowered her voice more. "Your dad is in trouble, big trouble." I went still. "What kind of trouble?" Elena swallowed. "Money, loans, he co-signed something for Logan. Big, and now Logan can't pay." My stomach dropped. "What does that have to do with me?" Another pause. Then Elena said, "Because they used your name too." My whole body went cold like ice water poured through my veins. "What do you mean they used my name?" Elena exhaled. "Camille, I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you deserve to know. Your dad took out a line of credit in your name, years ago, when you were sick. He said it was temporary." I couldn't breathe. "No." She said, "Yes, and now collectors are calling, and Logan's business is failing, and your parents are panicking." My hands started shaking so hard I had to sit down on the floor of my living room. I whispered, while I was in chemo. Elena didn't answer, but her silence was the answer. I felt something snap inside me. Not sadness. Not even anger. Something sharper. Something clean. I said, "Thank you for telling me." She whispered, "I'm sorry." I hung up and stared at my wall, hearing my own heartbeat in my ears. Because the twist wasn't that my father needed help. The twist was that even when I was fighting for my life, he was still using me. And I didn't know what I did next would finally end it. For real. That afternoon, I pulled my credit report. And there it was. Accounts I never opened. A credit line I didn't recognize. A payment history that made my stomach turn. Late payments. Collections. My name. My information. My life. I felt sick. Like I was back on chemo again, nauseous and dizzy, except this time it wasn't medicine poisoning me. It was my own family. I called the bank. I asked questions. I took notes. I requested documents. Then I called a lawyer. Not to get revenge. To protect myself. Because I was done being the family emergency fund. Done being the quiet one. The lawyer said, "Camille, if you didn't sign this, it's identity fraud." I swallowed. It was my dad. The lawyer's voice stayed calm. "Then your dad committed fraud." Hearing it said that plain made my stomach drop again. Because part of me still wanted to believe my father was just flawed. Not criminal. But reality doesn't care what you wish. 2 days later, my mom showed up at my apartment. No warning. I opened the door and there she was, looking older than I remembered. Her hair not as shiny. Her eyes puffy like she'd been crying. "Camille," she whispered, like she was stepping into a church. I didn't invite her in. I kept my hand on the door. She tried to smile. "Honey, please, we need to talk." I stared at her. "Now you need to talk." Her face crumpled. "Your father is sick, he's scared." I said, "So am I, every day, and I did it alone." She started crying harder. We didn't know what to do. I looked at her steady. "You didn't try." She flinched like I slapped her. Then she rushed out the truth, messy and panicked. "Camille, the debt is huge. Logan is drowning. Your dad thought he could fix it before you ever found out, he thought." I cut her off. He thought I wouldn't matter. My mom cried and nodded at the same time, like she couldn't even deny it. Then she reached for my hand. "Please, we can fix this. If you just come home, if you just help us, we can." I pulled my hand away. "I'm not your solution." She whispered, "But we're family." I looked her right in the eyes. "Family doesn't steal your name while you're in chemo." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I said, "You need to leave." She sobbed. "Camille, please." And for a second, I felt the old pain rise. That little girl part of me that still wanted a mother to choose her. But then I remembered the chemo chair. The empty seat beside me. The wedding photos. The silence. So I said it again. Leave. And she did. But I didn't know, my father was about to try one last move. A worse one. That night my father called again. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice wasn't crying now. It was cold. He said, if you do this, if you report this, you will destroy this family. You will ruin your brother's life. You'll be responsible. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Because no, I wasn't responsible for what they did. I wasn't responsible for the mess they made by treating me like a tool instead of a daughter. I filed the report. I gave the documents. I followed the steps. I didn't post about it online. I didn't make a scene. I didn't need revenge. I needed my life back. Weeks passed. Then months. The bank investigated. The lawyer handled the communication. And slowly, the mess started to unwind. Logan tried calling. He sent a message that said, Camille, please don't do this. I didn't respond. Because he didn't show up for me either. Not once. Not a ride to chemo. Not a meal. Not a text that said, I love you. Only don't do this when it finally affected him. And that told me everything. In the end, my father did not get a caregiver from me. He got professional help. He got doctors. He got resources. He got what he should have gotten for me when I was sick. And I got peace. Not the kind of peace that feels like winning. The kind that feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. Now let me tell you the part people always ask me. Do you hate your parents? No, I don't. Hate is heavy. Hate keeps you tied to the people who hurt you. What I feel is done. Finished. Closed. I forgave myself for begging. I forgave myself for hoping. I forgave myself for being the kind of girl who thought love had to be earned. And the lesson. This is the lesson. Being sick showed me who loved me. Being healed showed me who wanted to use me. You can be kind and still say no. You can have a heart and still have boundaries. You can wish someone well from far away, because you do not owe your future to people who abandoned you in your darkest time. If you're watching this and you've ever been the one who always shows up, the one who always forgives, the one who gets used because you have a good heart, I want you to remember this. Love without respect is not love. It's control. And boundaries aren't revenge. Boundaries are protection. So here's my last question for you. Comment the keyword boundaries if you're choosing yourself from now on. And subscribe if you want more story times like this, with real emotion, real twists, and real lessons. Because I'm Camille, and I'm not the strong one because I was born strong. I became strong because I had no other choice. I thought filing the report would make everything quiet. I thought once the paperwork was done, my life would go back to normal. I was wrong. Because when you finally stand up in a family like mine, they don't step back. They strike harder. And this time, they weren't just coming for my feelings. They were coming for my name, my money, and my reputation. And I didn't know it yet, but my father was about to prove something in a way I could never forget. 2 mornings after I filed the fraud report, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered because after cancer, I stopped being scared of phone calls. A calm male voice said, "Is this Camille?" I said, "Yes." He said, "This is Detective Harris. I need you to come in and give a formal statement." My stomach dropped. Not because I was guilty. Because suddenly it felt real. Like this wasn't family drama anymore. This was police. This was legal. I said, "Okay, when?" He replied, "Today if possible." I looked at the calendar on my wall. I had a follow-up appointment later that week. A routine scan. The kind of scan that still made my heart race, even when the doctor said I was fine. I swallowed. "I can come in today." He said, "Good, bring any documents you have." I hung up and sat very still on my couch. The apartment was quiet. The sun was bright. The world looked normal. But my body felt like it was back in the chemo chair again. Then Jade texted me, like she could sense it. "You okay?" I stared at her message for a second, then typed, "Police statement today." Her reply came fast. "I'm coming with you." I didn't argue. Because I finally learned something. Strong women still deserve support. At the station, the air smelled like old coffee and bleach. The chairs were hard. The lights were too bright. Everything felt sharp. Detective Harris was younger than I expected. Maybe mid-30s. Tired eyes. Calm voice. He shook my hand and said, "Thank you for coming in." I sat down. Jade sat beside me, quiet but steady. The detective slid a folder across the table. And the moment I saw the name on the top page, my throat went tight. It wasn't just one account. It was three. 3 different accounts. Different dates. Different amounts. All under my name. My voice came out small. "How is this possible?" He said, "That's what we're investigating." Then he looked at me carefully and asked, "Do you suspect anyone in particular?" I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to make it real out loud. But I did. I said, "My father." Detective Harris nodded like he wasn't surprised. Like he'd heard this story before. He asked, "Do you have proof your father had access to your personal information?" I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. "He raised me," I said. "He has everything." The detective kept his voice neutral. "When did you first notice the fraud?" I took a breath. "After he called me, after he asked me to come home, after I said no." "And then your cousin told you about the debt?" "Yes." He wrote notes. Slow. Steady. Then he asked, "Do you have your father's voicemail threatening you?" My chest tightened. I nodded. I deleted it. Jade's head snapped toward me like, "Why would you delete that?" I felt embarrassed. I didn't think. Detective Harris held up a hand. "It's okay, we can still proceed." Then he asked the question that made my stomach flip. "Has your father ever used your identity before?" I froze. Because a memory hit me hard. I was 19 college. My dad called and said, "I'm adding you as an authorized user on my card to help you build credit." At the time, I felt grateful. Like, wow, he's helping me. Now my skin went cold. I whispered, "I don't know." Detective Harris nodded again, like that answer meant more than I realized. He closed the folder and said, "Thank you, we will contact you soon." I stood up, legs a little shaky. And as I walked out of the station, I thought, okay, it's happening. But I didn't know, my father had already started telling his own version of the story. That night, my phone started buzzing like a wasp nest. Not my father. Not yet. Old family friends. People I hadn't spoken to in years. One message said, "Camille, I heard you're being cruel, your father is sick." Another said, "Don't do anything you'll regret." Another said, "Family is family." I stared at those words and felt this dull rage in my chest. Because nobody said, "Family is family," when I was vomiting after chemo alone. Nobody said, "Family is family," when my hair fell out in the shower and I cried into a towel so my neighbors wouldn't hear. Nobody said, "Family is family," when I sat in my car after diagnosis, shaking, and my father hung up. Now suddenly, family mattered. I didn't reply. I just put my phone face down. Then, around 9 p.m., my building buzzer rang. I froze. Jade looked up from my couch. "You expecting someone?" I shook my head. The buzzer rang again. And again. I walked to the intercom and pressed the button. "Hello." A familiar voice came through, tight and angry. "Camille, let me in." Logan. My brother. I hadn't heard his voice in 2 years. My heart thumped hard, not from love. From warning. I said no. He snapped, "Stop playing games, let me in." I didn't answer. Then his voice changed, softer. Fake soft. "Camille, please, just talk to me." I looked at Jade. She shook her head slightly like, "Don't do it." I pressed the button. "Say what you need to say now." Logan exhaled hard. "Dad is losing it, he's sick. Mom is crying all day, you're blowing up the whole family." I said, "I didn't do anything, Dad did." Logan's voice got sharp again. "You filed a report, do you know what that means?" I said, "Yes." He said, "It means you're putting Dad in handcuffs." I went quiet. Because I realized something. He didn't say, "Is it true?" He didn't say, "Did Dad really do this?" He said I was putting him in handcuffs. Like my father's actions were my fault. I said, "Logan, where were you when I had cancer?" Silence. Then he said, "Don't do that." I laughed once dry. "Don't do what?" asked the obvious question. He replied, "I had stuff going on. I had a wedding. I had a baby." I said, "And I had chemo." He breathed hard into the speaker like he wanted to scream. Then he said the line that told me exactly who he was. Camille, just take the debt, you can't afford it. My mouth went open for a second because I couldn't believe it. I said, what? He said, you're doing well. You always land on your feet. Just pay it off quietly and let Dad handle the rest. I felt my face get hot. So I said, calm but deadly, no. Logan's voice turned ugly. You were always selfish. I went still. Selfish. Me. The one who lived alone through cancer while they celebrated. I said, get away from my building, Logan. He hissed, you think you're better than us now. I replied, no, I think I'm done being used. Then I hung up the intercom. The buzzer rang again. I didn't answer. And I didn't know he wasn't leaving. Not yet. 10 minutes later, there was banging on my apartment door. Hard. Angry. My whole body went alert. Jade stood up fast. Call the police. I whispered, it's my brother. Jade said, I don't care who it is. The banging hit again. Camille. Logan yelled through the door. Open up. My heart was racing, but I walked toward the door anyway. Not to open it. Just to stand behind it. I said, loud enough for him to hear, if you don't leave right now, I'm calling security. He laughed cold. Do it. Then his voice dropped lower. Meaner. You think you're a hero because you beat cancer. You're still the same nobody to Dad. My stomach twisted. Jade grabbed my arm. Don't listen. But Logan kept going, like he wanted to cut me open. You were always the burden, always the weak one. Now Dad is weak and you're getting payback. That's sick. I leaned close to the door and said, very clear, Logan, I'm going to say this once. If you ever come to my home again, I will get a restraining order. Silence. Then he said, you wouldn't. I replied, try me. Then I stepped back. Jade called building security. 2 guards came up. I heard voices in the hallway. Logan arguing. Then footsteps moving away. Then silence. The moment it was quiet again, I sat down on the floor and realized my hands were shaking. Jade knelt beside me. You okay? I whispered, I hate that my body reacts like I'm still a kid. Jade touched my shoulder. That's not weakness, that's your nervous system remembering. I closed my eyes. Because she was right. And I didn't know my nervous system was about to get one more shock. A week later, Detective Harris called again. He said, we pulled the security footage from the bank. My stomach dropped. And he said, we have a person making the withdrawals. I held my breath. Who? He paused, then said, it appears to be your mother. I went completely still. Jade, sitting across from me, mouthed, what? My voice cracked. My mother. Detective Harris said, yes, we're still confirming identity, but the resemblance is strong. I couldn't speak. Because in my mind, my father was the villain. Cold. Controlling. The one who did everything. My mother was weak. Passive. The one who didn't know what to do. But now. My mother's face on a bank camera. My mother's hands. My mother signing. I whispered, no. Detective Harris continued, we'll need you to come in again. There may be additional charges. I said, barely audible, okay. When I hung up, Jade said, Camille. I stared at the wall like I wasn't in my body. Then I said, she watched me suffer and still did it. Jade's eyes filled. I'm so sorry. I swallowed hard. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was proof. Proof that I wasn't forgotten. I was chosen. Chosen to be used. And I didn't know, the reason they chose me was darker than I ever imagined. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done since cancer. I went through my old family documents. Not because I missed them. Because I needed the truth. I pulled out my birth certificate from the folder I kept in my closet. I looked at my parents' names. I looked at my own. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed something small that made my skin prickle. A date stamp on the certificate. It wasn't the day I was born. It was 3 months later. I frowned. Maybe that was normal. Maybe paperwork is slow. But my gut didn't like it. So I searched for other documents. Old school records. Immunization forms. Anything. And the more I looked, the more something felt off. Like my life had been edited. Like someone had copied and pasted my story. And then I remembered something from my cancer treatment. During genetic counseling, my doctor asked me about family history. Breast cancer, colon cancer, ovarian cancer, anything. I told her I didn't know much. She said, we can run a genetic panel to see if you carry certain risks. I did it because I wanted answers. At the time, I thought it was only about cancer. Now my mind went back to the report. There was a section I barely read because I was so scared. It said something like, results suggest limited hereditary match to reported family history. I had ignored it. Now I pulled up my patient portal and read it again. My heart started pounding. Because the wording was strange. Not a direct statement, but enough to make me wonder. And a horrible thought slid into my mind, slow and cold. What if the reason they treated me like a stranger was because I actually was one? I sat there, staring at my laptop. Jade said softly, Camille, what are you thinking? I swallowed. What if I'm not their daughter? Jade's eyes widened. What? I nodded slowly, like I couldn't believe my own words. Then I whispered, what if that's why it was so easy for them to leave me alone? Jade didn't answer. She just sat closer. And in that moment, I knew one thing. I needed facts. So I ordered a DNA test. Not to be dramatic. To be sure. And I didn't know that small little box in the mail would change my entire life. When the DNA kit arrived, it looked harmless. Just cardboard. Just a tube. Just instructions. But my hands shook when I opened it. I did the sample. I sealed it. I shipped it back. Then the waiting started. And waiting is the worst part, because your mind writes horror stories. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm right? What if it breaks me? What if it frees me? 2 weeks later, I got an email. Your results are ready. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I clicked. Jade sat beside me, silent like this was sacred. I clicked. The page loaded. And my world tilted. It said I had no close match to my father. Not even a partial. Not even a distant. It showed my parent matches. One unknown male. One unknown female. My mouth went dry. Jade whispered, Camille. I scrolled down. There were names I didn't recognize. Then one result stood out. A match labeled, Aunt, 24% shared DNA. Her name was Alina R. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Because if I had an aunt I didn't know, that meant I had a whole family I didn't know. I whispered, oh my God. Jade asked, what do you do now? I took a shaky breath. I messaged her. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, simple and careful. Hi, I think we may be related. I was adopted or something is missing in my family story. Can we talk? I hit send. Then I sat there, heart pounding, waiting for a stranger to answer a question my own parents never would. And I didn't know she would answer within an hour. The message came in. Hi Camille, I saw the match and I've been staring at it. I'm shaking. Can you please tell me your birth date and where you were born? I typed back my birth date. My city. Then I waited. 5 minutes felt like 50. Then her next message came. Camille, I need to call you now. We got on the phone. Her voice was older. Soft. But broken. She said, I had a sister. Her name was Marisol. My chest tightened. Okay. Alina continued. Marisol got pregnant when she was young. It was a hard time, but she was so happy. She kept saying, I'm going to name her Camille. My heart stopped. Because that's my name. Alina's voice cracked. My sister disappeared before she gave birth. She never came home. We searched. We never found her. My hands went numb. I whispered, are you saying? Alina started crying. I don't know, I don't want to scare you. But your name, your date, it matches the timeline. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Jade grabbed my hand. Alina said, Camille, can you tell me the names of the people who raised you? I hesitated. Then I said, Richard and Diane. There was a pause on the line. Then Alina's voice turned sharp. Richard, last name. I told her. Silence. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. That man was questioned in our case years ago. It went nowhere, but he was on the list. My stomach dropped so fast I felt sick. I whispered, what? Alina said, Camille, you need to talk to the police. Now, not later. I was shaking. Because suddenly it wasn't just fraud. It was something darker. Something older. Something that could explain everything. The basement feeling. The coldness. The way my father looked at me like I didn't belong. I hung up and sat there, trembling. Jade said, "Camille, we're calling the detective." I nodded. And I didn't know that phone call would finally bring the handcuffs I never asked for, but the truth demanded. Detective Harris didn't sound shocked when I told him. He sounded focused. He said, "Come in tomorrow morning. Bring the DNA results. Bring the contact information for Alina." That night I barely slept. I kept seeing flashes of my childhood. My father telling me, "Don't ask questions." My mother snapping, "You should be grateful." Me cleaning, serving, staying quiet. And I thought, was I raised like that because they hated me? Or because they were hiding me? The next morning, the station felt colder than before. Detective Harris took the papers, looked at them, then left the room without a word. I sat there with Jade, waiting, stomach twisting. 10 minutes. 20. 30. Finally he came back, face tight. He said, "Camille, we're reopening an old case." My throat closed. "What case?" He said, "A missing person case from 29 years ago." I blinked. 29. He nodded. Marisol. My heart hammered. He continued, "We can't confirm anything yet, but your DNA results are strong enough to justify a deeper investigation, and combined with the financial fraud, we have leverage." I whispered, "What does that mean?" He looked me in the eyes and said, "It means this is bigger than you thought." I felt dizzy. Jade squeezed my hand hard. Detective Harris said, "We're going to need a DNA confirmation through our system. Official chain of custody. Are you willing?" I swallowed. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about a woman named Marisol, who never came home. A woman who might be my mother. I nodded. Yes. They took the sample. Then the waiting started again. But this wait felt different. This one felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down, knowing the truth was at the bottom. 2 weeks later, Detective Harris called. He said, "Camille, we need you to come in." My voice shook. "Is it confirmed?" He didn't answer directly. He just said, "Please come in." When I walked into the station that day, I saw them. My father. My mother. Sitting on a bench. Not proud. Not in control. Small. My father's hands were cuffed. My mother's face was streaked with tears. My knees almost buckled. Detective Harris met me at the door and guided me into a side room. He said, "Camille, I want you to hear this privately." I nodded like my neck barely worked. He spoke slowly. "The DNA results confirm you are biologically related to Alina. She is your aunt." My breath caught. He continued, "Which means Richard and Diane are not your biological parents." My whole body went cold. Then he said the next part. "And the missing person case, Marisol, we have reason to believe your father was involved in her disappearance." I stared at him, not understanding, not wanting to. Detective Harris added, "We cannot undo what happened, but we can pursue the truth." My mouth opened and no sound came out. Then I whispered, "So who am I?" He softened slightly. "You are Camille, you always were, but you were raised by people who did not deserve you." I sat down hard in the chair, shaking. Because suddenly my whole life made sense. Why I felt like an outsider. Why they treated me like work, not love. Why my mother helped commit fraud like it was nothing. Because I wasn't their daughter. I was evidence. And I didn't know, seeing my father in handcuffs would feel like this. I thought I would feel happy. I didn't. I felt grief. Not for him. For me. For the girl who cleaned floors and thought she was worthless. For the girl who fought cancer alone and still tried to call home. For the girl who believed love was something you had to earn by being quiet and helpful. Jade hugged me in the station hallway while people walked past like it was normal. I whispered into her shoulder, "My whole life was a lie." Jade whispered back, "No, your life was stolen, but you survived, and now it's yours." Later that day, Detective Harris asked if I wanted to speak to my father. I stared at the floor. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to spit in his face. But mostly, I wanted to protect my peace. I said no. Then Detective Harris said, "He asked for you." Of course he did. Now that he couldn't control the story, he wanted access to me. I shook my head. No. Then my mother started shouting from the bench, voice cracking. Camille, please, it's not what you think. I turned and looked at her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, clear as glass, I know exactly what I think. She sobbed harder. My father stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Then he said, Camille, I did what I had to do. I felt my stomach twist. I said, you did what you wanted. He blinked like he didn't expect me to talk. I stepped back. And I walked out. Not running. Not rushing. Walking like I finally owned the ground under my feet. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I took the deepest breath I'd taken in years. And I realized something. Cancer didn't break me. They didn't break me. I was still here. And now I was free. In the months that followed, everything changed fast. There were interviews, paperwork, lawyers, reports. Alina flew in to meet me. When I saw her at the airport, I froze. Because her face looked like mine. Her eyes. Her cheeks. The way she smiled through tears. She walked toward me slowly, like she was afraid I would disappear if she moved too fast. Then she whispered my name. Camille. I stepped forward and she hugged me so tight it hurt. She said, I'm so sorry, we tried to find you. I cried into her shoulder like a child. Because for the first time in my life, someone was grieving for what happened to me. Not blaming me. Not using me. Grieving. We sat in my apartment for hours. Alina showed me pictures of Marisol. My hands shook holding them. Marisol's smile was warm. Fierce. Alive. Alina said, she would have fought for you. I whispered, I think I did the fighting for both of us. Alina nodded, tears falling. Yes, you did. Then she said something that healed a part of me I didn't know was bleeding. You were never unwanted, Camille, you were taken. After that, I started rebuilding in a new way. Not just financially. Not just legally. Emotionally. I went back to therapy, but this time the conversation changed. It wasn't only about cancer or rejection. It was about identity. About grief. About the strange pain of finally getting answers and still feeling empty. My therapist said, you're mourning two things. You're mourning the family you thought you had, and you're mourning the family you should have had. I nodded, tears in my eyes. And I don't know which one hurts more. She said both can hurt, and you can still move forward. Slowly I did. I changed my locks. I changed my phone number. I froze my credit. I cleaned up my financial records. I also did something symbolic. I framed a photo of Marisol and put it on my shelf. Not because I knew her. Because I deserved to honor her. And because a part of me felt like she had been with me the whole time, pushing me to survive. One night, months later, I was sitting on my couch drinking tea. Jade was beside me, scrolling on her phone. She looked up and said, do you ever think about what you would say to your dad if you saw him again? I stared at my cup. I thought about his first words to me when I said, stage 3. We can't deal with this right now. I thought about him crying, asking me to come home. I thought about him saying, I did what I had to do. I took a slow breath. Then I said, I already said it. Jade frowned. What? I looked at her steady. Call your son, Dad. Jade's eyes softened. Yeah. Because that line wasn't just about caregiving. It was my boundary. It was my goodbye. It was me finally refusing to carry people who never carried me. Now listen. I know this story is heavy. But there's a lesson here that I want you to hold in your hands like a light. If people abandon you in your darkest moment, believe them. Not because you're bitter. Because you're awake. If someone only calls when they need something, that isn't love. That's a transaction. And if your kindness is being used as a doorway for other people's selfishness, it's okay to close that door. You are not cruel for protecting yourself. You are not heartless for choosing peace. You can be a good person and still say no. Because you don't owe your life to people who treated your pain like an inconvenience. And if you're watching this and you've ever felt alone in your own family, I want you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not dramatic. You were just asking for what you deserved. Love, respect, support. And if they didn't give it, that is their failure. Not yours. So here's where I'll end this story. I beat cancer. I faced betrayal. I uncovered the truth. And I walked away from a life built on lies. Not with hate, with clarity. If this story hit your heart, comment the keyword free so I know you made it to the end. And subscribe, because I tell stories like this for the women who were taught to stay quiet, for the women who were told to serve, for the women who are finally choosing themselves. This is Camille. And I'm not begging for love anymore. The line went quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet. The heavy kind. The kind that makes your ears ring. My dad stopped crying so fast it scared me. He didn't yell. He didn't even breathe for a second. Then he whispered, like he couldn't believe what he heard. Camille, what? I held the phone tighter. My hand was shaking. Not from fear. From memory. I said it again, slower this time. Ask my brother, Dad. Another long pause. Then his voice changed. It got thin. Sharp. Like paper cutting skin. Your brother has a family now, he said. He can't do this. I almost laughed. But nothing about it was funny. I stared at the wall in my apartment. At the sunlight coming through the blinds. At the little plant on my windowsill that I kept alive during chemo, just to prove I could keep something alive. And I didn't have a family. I asked. He breathed out like I was being dramatic. Camille, don't do this. We're talking about Parkinson's. I was talking about cancer, I replied. That's when he went quiet again. And I swear, in that silence, I heard the old truth. The truth I had been swallowing my whole life. He didn't care when it was me. He cared now because it was him. Then he said the sentence that made my stomach drop. I knew you would punish us. Punish. Like I was a child throwing a fit. Like he didn't leave me alone in hospitals and waiting rooms and cold nights. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm choosing me. He laughed once. A dry little sound. You're being selfish. And that word hit like a slap. Selfish. Because I didn't become their emergency plan. My voice stayed calm, but my chest felt like fire. I'm not your caregiver, I said. I'm your daughter, the one you abandoned. He started talking faster now. The wedding was stressful. Your brother needed support. We had a lot going on. We thought you were strong. Strong. They always called me strong when they didn't want to show up. I swallowed. I was strong because I had no choice, I said. Goodbye. I ended the call. And the second the screen went dark, my phone started buzzing like it was possessed. A text from my mom. A missed call. Another missed call. Then my brother. Then my mom again. My stomach turned. Because I knew what was coming. They weren't calling to ask how I felt. They were calling to fix the damage. And I didn't know it yet. But my dad had already made the next move. The next morning, I walked into my office like a normal person. I had a warm coffee in my hand. A clean blazer. A calm face. I looked normal. But inside, I was bracing. Because when families like mine lose control, they don't apologize. They attack. Around noon, I got an email from HR. Subject line, urgent, please stop by. My throat went dry. I walked down the hallway slowly. The carpet felt too soft under my shoes, like I was walking through a dream. When I entered the HR room, my manager was there. And sitting beside her was my mother, in her pearl earrings, her perfect hair, her sad eyes, like she was the victim. My manager stood up, confused. Camille, your mother asked to speak with us. She said it was an emergency. I looked at my mom. I didn't sit. What did you tell them? I asked. My mom pressed a hand to her chest like she was in pain. Sweetheart, we're worried, she said. You've been acting unstable. Unstable. That word made the room tilt. My manager blinked. Unstable. My mom nodded softly. She's been through so much, she said, and her voice got syrupy. And we love her, but she's refusing to help her father. She's saying cruel things. She's not herself. I stared at her. This woman didn't visit me once during chemo. Not once. But now she was here, in my workplace, acting like she'd been holding my hand the whole time. My manager looked uncomfortable. Camille, is everything okay at home? I smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind you make when you realize someone is trying to ruin you. I'm fine, I said. But my mother is lying. My mom gasped like I stabbed her. Camille. No, I said louder. Let's be honest, you're not worried about me. You're worried about who will care for Dad. My manager shifted in her chair. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but this is a workplace matter. We can't. My mom leaned forward. I'm not trying to cause problems, she said. I just need my daughter to come home. Come home. Back under control. I looked straight at my manager. I can explain everything, I said. But not here, not with her. My manager nodded slowly. Camille, you can take the rest of today off. Paid, go home, handle whatever you need. My mom's eyes flashed with victory. Like she thought she'd won. But she didn't know something. I had survived poison in my veins. I had survived being alone. I had survived fear that kept me awake at night. I was not going to be scared of a woman with pearls and fake tears. Outside in the parking lot, my mom grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in. You embarrassed me, she hissed. I pulled my arm back. You embarrassed yourself. Her face tightened. Your father is sick. And I was sick too, I said. She snapped, don't compare it. That's when I realized something. In her mind. My pain didn't count. And in that moment, something inside me went cold and clean. I said, tell Dad to hire a nurse. My mom's eyes narrowed. With what money? And that was the sentence that made my heart stop. Because my parents had money. They always had money. So why would she ask that? Unless there was something I didn't know. I went home and sat on my couch. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I did something else. I opened my laptop. I started looking at everything I used to ignore. Old emails. Old documents. Old family messages. Because the truth is, when someone suddenly needs you, it's often because they broke something, and they need you to pay the price. I searched my inbox for the word medical. And there it was. An email from 2 years ago. The year I was diagnosed. From my dad. Subject line, Family Emergency Fund. I clicked it. My breath got stuck in my throat. He had written to my uncle and aunt. He said, Camille's situation is private. We ask everyone to respect our family. We are managing it. Managing it. Like I was a problem. Then I saw the next line. We are using the emergency fund to cover immediate family needs this year. Emergency fund. What emergency fund? My hands shook as I kept reading. And then I saw it. A forwarded message. From a bank. And a number. A big number. A fund under my grandmother's name. I stared at the screen. Because my grandmother had passed years ago. And she had always told me, if you ever need help, come to me. But she died before my cancer diagnosis. So why did her name show up next to a fund? I felt my stomach drop. And in that moment, I knew. My dad didn't ignore me because he was busy. He ignored me because he was hiding something. So I called the one person in my family who still spoke to me like I was human. My Aunt Nadia. She picked up on the second ring. Camille, she said, shocked. Are you okay? I didn't even say hello. Aunt Nadia, I said. What is Grandma's emergency fund? The silence on the line told me everything. Who told you about that? She asked quietly. My voice went small. I found an email. She breathed out. Oh God. What is it? I asked again. And then she said the words that changed everything. Camille, your grandmother left money for you. I went still. For me. I whispered. Yes, she said. For your future, for emergencies, for health. My throat tightened. Health like cancer. She didn't answer right away. And that was worse than an answer. Aunt Nadia, I said. Did Dad use it? I heard her swallow. Then she said, he said he had to. My blood went cold. He said he had to because of the wedding, she added. The room around me felt far away. My couch. My lamp. The hum of the fridge. It all faded. Because suddenly, I understood why my mother said, with what money? They didn't want me to be caregiver. They wanted me to be quiet. Because if I talked, people would ask questions. And those questions would lead to the thing my parents feared most. The truth. I hung up and sat there, staring at the wall. I thought about the day I called my dad, shaking, saying, Stage 3. And he said, we can't deal with this right now. I thought about chemo alone. The taste of metal in my mouth. The way my hair fell out in my hands. And while I was fighting to live, they were planning flowers, cake, music, seating charts, using money meant for my life, and I didn't know it then. But my father wasn't just asking for a caregiver. He was asking for protection. That night, my brother finally called. I stared at his name on my screen. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Because I needed to hear him. "Camille," he said, and he sounded angry. "What is wrong with you?" I laughed once, bitter. "What's wrong with me?" I repeated. "You're making Mom cry," he snapped. "Dad is shaking, he's sick, and you're acting like a monster." Monster. Interesting. Because when I was sick, nobody called him a monster for disappearing. I asked, "Where were you during my chemo?" He paused. Then he said the sentence I expected. I didn't know it was that serious. My jaw tightened. "You didn't know," I said slowly, "because you didn't ask." He got defensive. "Why are you blaming me? I was planning my wedding." There it was. Always the wedding. I leaned back, voice calm. "Brandon," I said, "did Dad use Grandma's fund for your wedding?" Silence. Then he said, "What fund?" My stomach twisted. So my brother didn't even know. That meant my dad hid it from him too. I whispered, "Wow." "What?" Brandon demanded. I said, "Dad didn't choose you over me because he loves you more." Brandon scoffed. "Stop." "He chose you," I continued, "because you make him look good." Brandon's breathing got louder through the phone. Then he said, "You're insane." And I almost believed him for 1 second. Because that's what families like this do. They push you until you snap. Then point at you and say, "See, she's the problem." But I wasn't snapping. I was waking up. So I said, "I'm going to ask you one last time. Did Dad use money meant for me?" Brandon's voice dropped. "Camille, what are you talking about?" I replied, "Ask your wife's wedding planner what account the deposit came from." And I hung up. My hands were steady. My heart was pounding. Because I knew what would happen next. When people realize you know the truth, they don't stay calm. They come running. And they did. 2 days later, I got another call. From my dad. This time he wasn't crying. He was furious. "You're spreading lies," he said. I blinked. "Lies." He shouted, "Your aunt has been gossiping." So Aunt Nadia told him. And now he was in panic mode. I said, "Tell me this, did Grandma leave money for me?" He went quiet. I waited. Finally he said, "That money was for the family." "For the family?" I repeated. "So you spent it on a wedding?" "It wasn't just a wedding," he snapped. "It was Brandon's future." I laughed again, but this time it was sharp. "And my future was cancer," I said. "You understand that, right?" He said, "Stop being dramatic." And that was it. That was the moment my old love died. Because you can forgive mistakes. But you can't build a relationship with someone who thinks your pain is drama. So I said, "I'm done talking." He hissed, "You owe me, after everything I've done." I whispered, "You didn't do anything." Then I ended the call. And I made another call. To a lawyer. Not to attack. Not to get revenge. To protect myself. Because I had learned the hard way. When you stop letting people use you, they try to punish you. My lawyer's name was Elise. She was calm. She didn't flinch when I told her everything. She asked one question that hit me hard. "Camille," she said, "do you have proof?" And I did. Emails. Bank traces. Aunt Nadia's message confirming it. And one more thing. A receipt. A huge wedding venue payment. With the same account number from the emergency fund email. I stared at that receipt for a long time. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was a choice, written in numbers. Elise said, "Here's what we can do. We can request records. We can send a formal letter. You don't have to go public. But you can set boundaries in writing." Boundaries in writing. That sounded like oxygen. So we did it. Elise sent a letter to my parents. It wasn't rude. It wasn't emotional. It was clean. It said, "Camille is not available as a caregiver. Camille requests documentation of any funds used in her name or intended for her. Camille requests no contact except through counsel." When my parents received it, they lost their minds. My mom showed up at my apartment. She banged on the door like the building was on fire. "Camille," she screamed. "Open up." I didn't. I stood behind the door, heart racing. Because part of me still wanted my mom to be my mom. But reality was louder than hope. She kept shouting. You're doing this to kill your father. You're evil. You're ungrateful. Neighbors peeked out. Someone whispered, is everything okay? My mom turned and smiled at them, tears appearing on command. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said sweetly. My daughter is going through something. Then she looked back at my door and her face went hard again. Open the door. I didn't. Because I remembered sitting in a hospital chair, alone, shaking, wishing someone would show up. No one did. So I didn't owe her a door. After 10 minutes she left. But she left one last gift. A voicemail. Her voice was soft in it. Too soft. Camille, she said, if you don't come help your father, people will find out things about you. Things you don't want shared. I stared at my phone. Threats. So that was their plan. If guilt didn't work, fear would. And that's when I realized the real twist. My parents weren't calling me because they had changed. They were calling me because they needed control again. Because my dad's Parkinson's wasn't the only problem. Their image was cracking. And the truth was standing right behind them like a shadow. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I met them. Not at my apartment. Not at their house. Public place. A quiet cafe. Middle of the day. Cameras everywhere. Witnesses. I walked in wearing a simple coat. Hair grown back. Face calm. They were already there. My dad looked older. His hands did shake a little. My mom held his arm like a trophy. My brother came too. And my brother's wife sat beside him, looking confused and scared. She didn't know the full story yet. I could see it in her eyes. My dad tried to smile. Camille, he said, like we were normal. I didn't sit right away. I looked at all of them and said, I'm not here to argue. My mom's eyes narrowed. Then why are you here? I sat down slowly. Because I want to say one thing clearly. My dad leaned in like he expected a plea. My mom held her breath like she expected a confession. I looked at my brother's wife. Then I looked at my brother. Then at my parents. And I said, you left me alone to die. The table went still. My dad's face twitched. My mom whispered, don't say it like that. I said, it was like that. My brother's wife blinked fast. What do you mean? She asked softly. My brother stared at his coffee. My dad said, Camille, we didn't. I cut him off. Calm. For 6 months, not one visit, I said. Not one ride, not one meal, not one hand to hold. My mom snapped, we called. I nodded. Yes, you called, and every call ended the same way. I looked at my dad. And I repeated his words. We can't deal with this right now. Your brother is planning his wedding. My brother's wife's mouth fell open slightly. My dad's face turned red. My mom rushed in. We thought you were handling it. I smiled. I handled it because I had to. Then I leaned forward. And now you're asking me to handle you. My dad swallowed. He tried a softer voice. I made mistakes. I asked, did you use grandma's money for the wedding? My brother's wife turned fast. What money? My brother finally spoke. Camille, stop. I didn't even look at him. I looked at my dad. He didn't answer. My mom did. It was for the family, she said, defensive. My brother's wife stared at her. You used money meant for Camille for our wedding. My brother shot her a look. Don't. She pulled her hand away from his. Oh. That was the sound without words. The sound of a marriage realizing it was built on a lie. My dad tried to stand, shaking hands, voice loud. This is private. I stayed seated. And I said very quietly, so was my cancer, but you still ignored it. My dad looked around. People in the cafe were watching now. He sat back down, voice low. What do you want? I shook my head. And I said the truth that finally set me free. I don't want anything. My mom scoffed. Then why are you doing this? I replied, because I'm done being silent. My dad's face tightened. If you don't help me, I'll. I raised my hand slightly. Threaten me again, I said. Go ahead, I saved your voicemail. My mom froze. My brother's wife looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. My dad's eyes darted. He knew he couldn't win in public. So he tried the last weapon. Tears. Camille, he said, voice breaking. I'm your father. I nodded. Yes. He whispered, I need you. I leaned closer. And I said my 4 words again, but this time they landed like stone. Ask my brother, Dad. My brother flinched. My dad stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Then he said, he won't do it. I shrugged. Then hire help. My mom hissed, we can't afford it. And I looked at her, calm as winter. Then you should have saved the money, I said. Silence. Total silence. My brother's wife stood up slowly, eyes glossy. She said, I need air. My brother grabbed her wrist. She yanked it away. And she walked out. My brother stood like he wanted to chase her. But he didn't. Because for once, he didn't know what to do. My dad stared at me, voice small. So that's it? I nodded. That's it. Then I stood up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just said, I hope you get the care you need, but it won't be from me. And I walked away. Outside, the air felt clean. Like I had been holding my breath for years. Later that week, Elise called me. She said, they're backing off. I asked, why? She said, because your father is scared. Scared of what? Of me. No. Of the truth getting out. Because when you build your life on looking good, the truth is your biggest enemy. A month passed. Then 2. My phone stayed quiet. And for the first time in my life, silence felt peaceful. I focused on my health. I went to checkups. I went to the gym. I ate food that made me feel alive. I started dating again. I laughed in ways I forgot I could. I built a life. A real one. Then one afternoon, Aunt Nadia called. Her voice was soft. Camille, your dad hired a nurse. I exhaled. Good, I said. She paused. Your brother didn't step up. Of course he didn't. Aunt Nadia added, and his wife, she's not speaking to any of them. I closed my eyes. Because that part wasn't joy. It was grief. Not for them. For the years I wasted hoping they would love me right. Aunt Nadia said, I'm proud of you. And that was the closest thing to a parent's love I needed. One evening, months later, I got one message from my dad. Just one. No crying. No anger. It said, I didn't know you were that alone. I stared at it. And I realized something. He did know. He just didn't care. So I didn't reply. Because healing isn't proving your pain to the people who caused it. Healing is building a life that doesn't require their permission. Now, let me step out of the story and talk to you like a friend. If you've ever been the one who always forgives, the one who always shows up, the one who gets treated like a backup plan, listen to me. You are not a tool. You are not a spare part. You are not here to carry people who refuse to carry you. Being kind does not mean being available for abuse. And boundaries are not hate. Boundaries are love. Love for yourself. I didn't say ask my brother because I wanted revenge. I said it because I was done being the only one who pays the price. And the lesson is simple. When people show you who they are in your worst moment, believe them. Then choose yourself. Because if you don't, they will keep choosing themselves again and again while you disappear. If this story hit you, comment the word boundaries so I know you're here with me. And if you want more story times like this, real drama, real lessons, real strength, subscribe and stay close. Because this isn't just my story. It's a lot of ours.